5 gallons of an all-grain batch that I call Cry Me a River. It's a rye wheat beer using American yeast. I'm going to keep it pretty simple with some of the devices that I've built, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we got to do is get our hot water tank up and go on and get the water heated up to what we need. So what that means, I'm using city water. What I've did is I built a filter that just connects up to the garden hose, and it has a internal shower filter that's rated for like 10,000 gallons. Pretty much all we want to do is strip out the chlorine that's in the city water. So it's pretty basic, does it pretty quick. Just go ahead and put that in there and go ahead and fill up our hot water tank. What I'm using is a 15.5 gallon Sankey keg as my hot water tank today. And then for our mash tun, what we're going to be using is a 10 gallon, just regular igloo cooler. Pretty basic. I built the spigot come off of that. And then internal, I got a just a basic mash kettle screen to help filter out the grains. And then for our boil kettle, I actually have a Bayou Classic. This is a 15 or 16 gallon pot. As you can see, I have the temperature, we have an outlet. And then internal, I also have a kettle or false bottom, stainless steel false bottom with a proper tubing that goes to the outlet. Okay, so now that we got our water warming up, next step we want to do is just want to take our grains that we got from the brew store for the recipe that we have. It's just all grains, and just go ahead and dump that into our mash pot. Next thing I want to do is, I know that my tap water is a little high on the pH, and generally for making beer you want your pH to be about 5, nothing less than 4.5, but right around 5 you shoot for. So there's this product, it's called 5-2 Stabilizer. It helps locks in your mash for the pH, so it doesn't take too much. Pretty much all you want to do is add about a teaspoon and a half per mash. So there's 1 teaspoon, and then I usually do about a teaspoon and a half, or a tablespoon and a half, sorry. Or, yeah, 1.5 tablespoons. Okay, right now our water tun is showing at 90 degrees and it's warming up slowly, which is fine, that's what we want. So it gives me a little time to explain to you the temperature differences when mashing. So, example, with this recipe I will be mashing at 155 degrees. Being as I know that I have exactly 10 pounds of grain in this recipe, my grain is at about 75 degrees or room temperature. I know that my strike water needs to be 167 degrees when I add it to the mash tun. So when you add your 167 degree water, it converts, you know, the coolness of the grain will bring it down to about 155 degrees, and that is exactly where you want to be at for an hour to help convert those sugars in your mash. One thing to tell you about is certain sugars convert at certain different temperatures. Generally, the lower temperature you mash at, say 155 down to 153, maybe all the way down to 147, 148, you get more fermentable sugars converted out of your grains. The higher you go, say 156, 157, 158, all the way to 163, you get less fermentables converted. When I say unfermentables, the yeast can't not eat that sugar, so it stays in the beer, giving you a heavier beer, a more flavorful beer. Lower temperatures, say you're making a lager, or example this Cry Me a River beer. I want it a little bit drier, a little bit more on the light side, kind of like a lager. So I mash it at a lower temperature at 155, 154ish. It gives me more fermentables, means the yeast will eat more of those sugars. It's going to be a drier, crisper, lighter beer. And that's there's a lot more into it than that, but that's kind of the gist of why you want certain temperatures. Alright, so we have our target temperature of 167 degrees. I know by a calculator that you can use on brewerfriends.com. It's just a basic mash calculator. Put in how many pounds of grain you got, what your boil temp is at your altitude, which means we're up here, my house sits at about 6,200 feet. I know my water boils at about 200 degrees, so it automatically adjusts for you. So I know that with this recipe, I need to add exactly 12 quarts of water at 167 to come out to my 155 mash temp. I've just got a 2-quart pitcher. We're gonna go ahead and add 12 quarts to the mash temp and just let it sit for about an hour. Okay, so after you add your 12 quarts of water, you just want to kind of go ahead and grab a spoon, stir up your grains and your water a little bit. You don't want any air pockets or anything in there because it will lower your efficiency for your mash. So you just want to make sure you give it a good swirl. Get it nice and cleaned up, get down to the corners and the edges. We'll do that. Now what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and put the lid on it. Let it sit for about 60 minutes. Just to show you, we pretty much just nailed it. 155.4. We'll let that sit. It's been holding there for about the past 5 minutes. These little 10-gallon igloo coolers hold the heat pretty well for their installation, so shouldn't drop but maybe 1 or 2 degrees, if that. So. This is the yeast we're going to be using for this batch. It's Y yeast. It's a smack packet. It's pretty simple. The reason why they call it a smack packet is there's an activation packet in there. So what you do is, if you can feel it all the way to the bottom, you'll feel a big bulb. What you do is you get down the bottom, hold it in the palm of your hand, smack it to rust out that nutrient pack. What happens is those nutrients, it's pretty much like a starter for the yeast that's inside the pack. So you just go ahead and give it a shake, get all the nutrients shook up, and then you let that sit out for about 3 hours. This bag will swell up. Right now you can tell it's pretty thin. And it'll swell up almost to where you think it's going to burst. This particular yeast for the rye beer that I'm using is a 1010 American wheat yeast. Okay, now that our hour is up, not sure if you can hear me over the burner, but we're reheating up the strike water. We want to get it up to about 170 so we can sparge out. The reason why you do the higher temperatures because it locks out the rest of those starches, and it makes the sugars more malleable, or it makes them mash out or sparge out into your kettle easier with the hotter water. So what we're going to do here is you don't want to let the first bit go into your boil kettle. So what you do is you slowly open up your valve just to let it trickle. And this is what you call vorlaughing. The reason why you're vorlaughing into your pitcher is you're using the actual grain bed inside of your mash tun as a filter. You let everything slowly compact down, and then your wort will get cleaner and cleaner as it goes through. So you let this run through a little bit, let it clean out. What you do is you put a piece of foil on top inside of your grains, and then you pour your pitcher back on top of that, so that way you don't redisturb your grain bed. If you redisturb it, then your wort's going to get dirty again. So you'll let this run through a couple times till you get clean, and then you just let it fill into your boil kettle. So the trick is you want just enough wort coming out of your valve, maybe just a quarter of the way open. If you go too fast, you'll suck too much stuff through your manifold or your false bottom. So this is just about right. It's starting to get cleared up. And so, like I said before, what you do is you just take this. See, I got a little square folded up foil in there, and then you pour your wort back onto that. That's so you don't redisturb your grain bed. And that's actually looking pretty clean, but we'll go ahead and do a couple more pitchers because the cleaner, actually if you look inside the pitcher, you can see all the grains that it was catching, and that's what you don't want into your boil kettle. Because the cleaner the beer you get, the better the final product will be. So we've finished vorlaughing. I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's fairly clear. If you look down there, you don't see any grains or any husk really floating around inside of the wort. So what we will do is once we get a few gallons here in the boil kettle, we'll go ahead and fire up the flame on low. That's the way it's heating up. One of the tricks to home brewing is trying to find the fastest way of doing it. So any little tricks you can have will help. And that means getting your boil going sooner. It sounds like our water is getting back up to temp. back up to 166. We'll get that up to 170 as soon as this is finished mashing out. Then we'll go ahead and sparge. We'll dump the mash water in there. We'll go ahead and boil off to keep it clean, and then we'll go ahead and empty that. And that's where we want to get a total into our boil kettle of about 6.5 gallons. When you do a 1 hour or 90-minute boil, you're going to boil off about 1.5 gallons of wort. You're in it with 5 gallons, and that's about where you need to be. Okay, as you can tell, we are approaching right at 5 gallons, so we got about another 1.5 gallons to go of our mash out. I've got the flame on to the boil kettle, which means now would be a good time to measure out your hops. So pick up just one of these standard scales anywhere pretty much. Got two kind of hops here. So what we have here is we got a whole leaf hop, and then we got pellet hops. So the pellet hops are pretty much the same as the whole leaf hop, except they're ground up. It depends on the type of beer I like to use. The whole leaf hops are cleaner finishing for your beer compared to the pellets. The pellets are easier, normally a little cheaper. But I like to, anytime I can find a whole leaf hop, which these days are starting to get harder to find, I'll use these just because you get a cleaner finishing beer as far as when you go to into your fermenter out of your boil. So an example on this beer here, once my wort starts to boil, I'm adding in 0.75 of an ounce of Willamette. So this bag is about 1 ounce, so what I'll do is I will measure out 0.75. Alright, so there, just a little too much, that's 0.8. So right there is 0.75 ounces of Willamette hops. So what I'll do is once it starts boiling, we'll add that into the wort. Alright, so I'm going to try to talk over this. I can tell you a little bit of a rainstorm, hailstorm. So we ended up with about 7 gallons total. That's fine. As long as it's always better to have a little bit more. My camera. It's always better to have a little bit more wort than not enough. So it's at a rolling boil now. It's good to have one of these ladles. Just trust me, as soon as we dump those hops in, as you're aware of, this is going to foam over. What I like to do, it's not really a proven thing. I like to let this boil just a little bit before I add the hops, just to get that protein break to go down. And you'll be able to tell as soon as those, as soon as the sugar that's accumulated on top boils down, then that's when we can add our hops. Generally only takes about, I don't know, a couple minutes. You want it really strong. And yes, it does rain and downpour while the sun is shining in Colorado. So now that we got our rolling boil going, we can go ahead and do our first hop add. So when you do that first hop add, that's when you start your timer again for exactly 1 hour. And how this is going to work is you're going to count down. So if you're going to do another hop add, say halfway through, you're going to do it at 30 minutes. When you read it, it says doing a hop add at 15. That means there's 15 minutes left in the boil to the end of the boil. Go ahead and stir this around. Smells good. So while that's boiling, now's a good time to get the carboy cleaned up and ready to go. So I just got done cleaning this one. Used PBW, cleaned it out, let it sit for about 20 minutes, and I cleaned it out, rinsed it out, washed it out real good. Another trick is these better bottles are known to crack very easily and then blow out. So what I've noticed that helps, grab an old kitchen rug or mat, set on that. That way it's not sliding around on the concrete and it won't tear up your carboys as much. But now is a good time to get this sanitized while it's boiling, and we'll go ahead and... So what I like to use is Star San sanitizer. Works very well. What we'll go ahead and do, put in about 1/2 ounce. Don't really need that much, maybe 1/4 ounce would be better, but I'm going to save some for later, so when you're spraying out hoses and stuff when you get to secondaries, I like to keep it in a spray bottle. So what I'll do is I'll throw a little water in there, wash it around, get everything nice and clean and sanitized for when we go to flame out and go into our carboy. So this thing right here is the Blickman Therminator. So what it does is it's a plate chiller, counterflow plate chiller. So what we got is we got cold water in, hot water out, goes to the yard. The wort here. So we open up this valve, hot wort goes in, and then cool wort comes out, goes straight to your carboy. You can take it from pretty much boil to 70 degrees, size it in a matter of minutes. So what we'll do is we'll take our pitcher and we'll open up. You do not want the cold water going through there yet. We'll open it up and that hot water, being that it's boiling, it will sanitize the inside of that plate chiller. As soon as it's still boiling. There we go. Good shot here. So what we're going to do now, our boil is done for 1 hour. Killed the flame to the pot. Now you can see there's a bunch of that hot, well, hold on, minus the smog. So we can see, what you got to do is you take your ladle here, and we're going to do a whirlpool. What we do is just get a good stir on it, good whirlpool. And what we're trying to do with this whirlpool is we're trying to get all the hops to kind of cone, when it settles, it'll be coned up in the center. And when you go to rack out of your boil kettle, you should have cleaner wort coming out, and not much of the hop seeds or the pelletized hops. So that should be about good enough. Okay, so now we got that sanitized. We're going to turn on our cold water here. Water running. Go ahead and open up our valve. It's almost wide open. Get it?
I cook the world's best duck flambe. I'll take the pick of the litter girl's jockey for me.